really what I learned from it. It was pushing through in the hard times and taking steps back. It sounds cliche, but it's always in the details and making sure that you're conscious of that. That was the biggest thing for me. I still, I'll think about it when I'm not in the best mindset. I'll go back to that place of, I was on top. I was on track.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to The Athletic Stance. On today's episode, we have an amazing up-and-coming young ski racer with a maturity that is way beyond her years. She is an athlete for Team Cliff Bar and has spent her entire life chasing speed. At the age of 3, she clicked into her first pair of skis and started following her 2 older brothers, Cole and Bronson, around the notorious terrain of her home mountain, Snowbird. If you haven't caught on yet, seems like Little Cottonwood Canyon has a lot of talent that pours out of it. At the age of 6, she and her brothers jumped into Snowbird's racing program. And now at the age of 22, she has established herself as an accomplished junior athlete and recently wrapped up the best NORAM season of her career. I truly think that she is a shining star and someone that has massive potential in the sport and is someone to watch out for. It was really cool to talk to her about a lot of the ways that she has been able to bounce back from injury, some of her practices, and just get to know her for who she is as a person. She is an amazing individual, and I really truly hope that you enjoy this episode with Miss Bella Wright.
Yeah, it's amazing how much of an intrinsic nature of just needing to trust yourself, because it all comes down to mindset. If you are constantly questioning, am I going to be fast this season? Am I going to be fast this season? Then likely you might not be as fast if you just intrinsically trust that the pattern that you have already established, the conditioning that you've already established is solid. That you know how to ski. It's not like you're going to forget how to ski, but you can convince yourself that you forgot how to ski if you think about it too much.
It gets annoying when you're growing up and you're doing all the sports psychology sessions and the mindset thing comes into play. And I think that the older I've gotten, the more I've understood it, obviously. But I listen to a lot of the short story long podcasts, and I listened to one with Rob Deerdeck on there, who's obviously one of the most successful entrepreneurs, and listening to him about how he talks about mindset really is what helped me click this year, and how it is about manifesting and positive self-talk and training your subconscious mind. That your subconscious mind, it takes the data and it becomes your repetition and your plan, and we're constantly feeding negative thoughts to our conscious mind, which are then storing data into the subconscious mind, and it's taking it from it's taken away from what we can really do. So listening to him talk about how he can wake up and basically manifest how his day is going to go was very, very interesting to me. And since then I've kept a journal and just been writing down little things or phrases or your biggest desires or your goals or whatever it is, because writing it down is more than half the step, because you're putting it out there. And that's been super cool for me to realize this year, is that mindset, it's not just what they teach you in sports psychology where it's always just this logic based thing. It is about shooting for the moon, but you have to believe that and you have to train your brain.
Yeah, totally. Do you know who Dr. Joe Dispenza is by any chance?
I think I've heard the name.
He's got a book called You Are the Placebo and Becoming Supernatural. And it goes into the scientific, like it basically proves manifestation through scientific reasoning, which I think is really cool because like as skiers, like we have so much that we base our world off of empirical evidence, off of what we experience, how we experience it and everything. And so like sometimes, you know, it's like, oh, there's like all that hippie woo woo BS and you like don't want to buy into it. Or, you know, maybe you really do want to buy into it. I've bought into it. And then I've also been like super skeptical about it. So, you know, like I've kind of been on all sides of the spectrum. And I think that, yeah, it's one of those things that when you can get in it all, like we said, it all comes down to mindset where like, if you believe in it, it's more likely to become true than if you don't believe in it. Right.
I mean, it's simple, but complicated at the same time. And it's something that, I mean, it's law of attraction. You put a photo up of something that you want and put it up on your wall. You look at it every single day. And it's something as simple as that. And it makes it so much stronger because you're putting it out there. You're putting your intention out there. And that is like, that's been really cool for me to practice more this year. And manifesting, I think people get scared of that word. Law of attraction, they don't really mind because there's a lot of books on that, obviously, and The Secret, a really famous book for that. But it's manifesting, you know, your life, what you want, and it doesn't have to be something huge. It can be something so small, but it means a lot to you as long as your intention's there. And yeah, that's been really fascinating for me to learn more about and practice more myself.
Do you do a lot of visualization for like courses and stuff like that, and or for accomplishing your dreams and goals?
I would say I do it more for accomplishing my dreams and goals than I do a course. I always try and picture coming through the finish line and celebrating rather than taking myself through the course. And that, yeah, I mean, that's, I'm visualizing when I'm about to go race and I'm up at the start. I guess, I mean, I'll go through the course in my head, but I always try and focus on the feeling that I'm having in the start and the feeling that I'm going to have crossing the finish line. Because I want to feel like I've already done it. I think that's the biggest thing is if you're kind of stuck doing it, then I don't think it's as effective as I've already done it. I've already done the race. I've already achieved what I wanted to achieve. That's it. It's done. All I need to do now is, you know, put it in action, and that's it. And I think that is the biggest thing for me is just pretending, I guess, that I've already done it, or trying, you know, tricking my brain into being like, okay, we got this.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that feeling of accomplishing it already is super powerful because it does, the subconscious doesn't have any sort of ability to relate to time necessarily. Like there's no such thing as time to the subconscious. You know, there's conditioning. So like you add the layers of like the neurons and like the neural pathway gets stronger, but it doesn't have a sense of time. And so I think, you know, that's like super powerful in developing self-confidence and developing the, you know, the ability to go put in the hard work. And it's the two need to be very synergistically aligned where you've already done it, but you're going to show up for it.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, that's also another balance of like, you got to show up.
Yeah. No, I love that you said the whole like time is an illusion type of thing because it's so true. And your brain does think that way. And yeah, I mean, like you said, showing up for it is more than half the battle, but you know, putting your intentions out there and out into the universe or, you know, whatever you want to call it, it's just a way of, you know, expressing to yourself too. When I write down something, and like they say, when you actually write it instead of type it, it goes into your brain. It recognizes it more. And that's been so cool to just write down anything, any type of dream, any type of little goal, no matter how big or small. It's gone straight to my brain, and I think about it constantly. And that's been a huge game changer.
Yeah, totally. Shifting gears a little bit, growing up, where did you find your inspiration? I think it'll kind of tie into where, like, maybe where you're at now and manifestation in some ways, but where did you find your inspiration, and how did you stay inspired through everything?
I think, growing up, it was just, it was my older brothers, and that group was what was so inspiring to me. And like Bryce Astle, who passed away, I would follow them around the mountain and watch them be so, like, it was just so blissful. It was this like craft, and that's what intrigued me. The ski racing is what I love, and it is my passion, but it's skiing in general is where it's gotten me. And, I've done so much powder skiing again this year, and that has been amazing training for me. And it brings you back to this place where you're thankful that you can even ski in the first place. It takes you out of the gates where it's so frustrating, like, I'm getting slower. And I guess, my inspiration came from the people around me, and the being in the mountains. And, it's not always easy waking up every morning super early and going up to train. But when you're up there and you're not in like reality, you're just in your own little world and bubble. I just loved that. And chasing those older group of boys was like my favorite thing to do, whether it was off of a cliff or in a race course. That was my thing. And that was always my biggest inspiration with them. And that feeling of crossing the finish line and feeling like you accomplished something and you did give it your best, that's the best feeling in the world. When you cross the finish line and you're not so stoked and you're like, I could have given it more. I think that can be such a horrible feeling because you didn't leave it all out there. And so, being inspired by people like Bryce Astle and my two older brothers, and even just public skiers. You see 80-year-old skiers out there, junior Benoist out there, just they're having the time of their lives doing something that I feel like we take for granted. Like, I forget how lucky I am to ski. Yeah. So it's pretty easy to be inspired where I grew up. The community, the Cottonwoods, it's been my whole life. We don't have a beach in Utah, obviously. That's like the only thing. I'm like, dang. But other than that, it's like the most amazing outdoor playground. And the outdoors it's crazy how many people don't ski in Utah that I grew up with. They've never been skiing. I'm like, what? Like, this is just mind-blowing to me. We have the most amazing mountains. And the community there is just, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think, Little Cottonwood Canyon, both of the Cottonwood Canyons, but Little Cottonwood Canyon has some special magic to it that is like, it's ineffable. You can't describe it. There's like, as much as you try and describe it, it just kind of like takes away some of the magic of it. And, from Alta and, just the amount of amazing skiers, like the people that you mentioned, to Marcus Caston, and, just so many amazing people that bring, a type of magic to that area and the sport in general. But there's something about Little Cottonwood for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's hard when you're looking at Mount Superior all day, every day, that you're like, this is the best office view there is. Like, it doesn't get any better.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know how comfortable you are talking about it, but if you are, because you've mentioned it a couple times, dealing with loss of friends in the ski community is like it's a real thing. And it's, I think, one of the hardest things about the ski community, because you develop such strong friendships and relationships with people that you almost expect to have them in your life for a long time. And so what are some of the things that you have done to honor and to help with the grieving process of?
Well, what I can say about Bryce is that everyone knew him as the good vibes only guy. And that's been what gets everybody through it. Anytime you talk about Bryce, it's just GVO. It's just good vibes only. And his family is very, like, they're the exact same. They just are so happy all the time. And you're like, how are you okay? It happened when we found out the news. We were all at a race in Park City. And I was in so much shock. I didn't finish my race that day. I don't even know how I went up for my run, but I hadn't cried yet because I think I was just confused. And especially because it was from an avalanche. It puts you in this place where you're like, that's just terrifying. He didn't have any control over that. And that was what was so devastating about it. I think the biggest thing that got me through it is I would watch my snowboard coaches who were very close with him, and they just shut down. They were so different, and they could nobody wanted to come to work. But every single person I grew up with, from Marcus Caston to all those guys to everybody younger, they're usually all at snowboard. All the people I grew up with, they're still either skiing or they're snowboard coaches. And that's what's so cool about it. And we put up a huge Bryce banner. They spread his ashes, people ski his favorite runs at Alta every single day. He just is still alive in the Cottonwood Canyon. And I think that's why it was hard, but it wasn't that hard because of the people that were around us. And his two brothers, Chris and Jason, they would go up, they would ski every single day still. They would have a smile on their face. And watching them go through that and be that okay, I had to be that okay. And he just feels alive there when we're skiing, and we're skiing his favorite runs, and we're thinking about him. And I wear him around my neck every single day. He's in all of us. And yeah, he's just a soul that can never leave. I think that him and Ronnie Burlack passed away in that as well. But he's from the East Coast. We had a West Coast boy, East Coast boy, everyone united. And now they created the foundation for them to, you can go and take Abby classes and all that stuff. But they created this community that wasn't just for Bryce or just for Ronnie. It was them together, and every ski racer has a sticker on their helmet or something written on their helmet. And that's what's so cool about it, is the ski community. We are so small, but with them, it just got together so many people. And it made it a lot easier.
Yeah, I think, community, like we were talking about in Little Cotton Canyon, and just in general in skiing, the community is what's so amazing about it. It's like you have a relation to people, just like you're saying, that 80-year-old that's out there on the resort, out there crushing it, smiling and everything. It's like you have an ability to relate to that person, no matter how different you are culturally, language. I was talking this weekend, and it's like dance is a form of communication without language. Mm-hmm. I think skiing is also one of those things where, like, you just have the hooting and hollering and like the, just the having fun. And even, like a smile is a universal language, and skiing makes most people that aren't crazy smile.
Yeah. And that's what Bryce was all about. It was just, I think it made it easier because he was, how everyone acted was how he would have acted. I think everyone channeled like their inner Bryce. They're like, he's good. Like it's tragic, but it's hard to, some people have their opinions about it and whatnot. Like, he was so young to pass away that quickly, and he was on the track of, knocking on the U.S. ski team's door. That was just, he was so talented, but what made him so great was he loved skiing in general, and it wasn't just racing. He would, he'd go huck a cliff before his race run, and he'd be smiling. He was that kid, and he was just the biggest inspiration. And Ronnie was the same for everybody back east. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's just everyone can smile about skiing. Everyone can watch others and smile and film each other and follow each other and do crazy things. And it's just a feeling unlike any other.
Yeah, totally. One of the things that I talked with Angel about was, I've lost several good friends to the sport of skiing, and it's so easy to get angry and not, to have that frame of mind where you're thinking about, how could the universe do this? How could God do this? How could this have happened to this person? And one of the biggest, shifts for me was learning to appreciate the time that I did get to spend with those people, and how amazing just that amount of time, even if I wanted, no matter how bad I wanted to spend another moment, just run with any of them. It's like, well, how do I just remember and become grateful for everything that they brought me?
Don't get me wrong. There were a lot of hard times for everybody, and there was anger, and there was a lot of, I remember saying, I'm never free skiing in Europe ever again. And that's not true, but it was the mind state that I was in. I was just like, not doing it. This is unfair. This is, however you want to take it. But I think that it's easy to snap out of that when you have so many good people around you. And I would go back to being 10 years old and remember chasing him around. And that's every time it brings me back to that place. And I either smile or tear up, but smile at the same time. That's my favorite moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think there's, it's hard because we don't talk about it much in our society, especially outside of the extreme sports, because it's not super common. Yeah, it's one of those things that you can't empathize with until you've dealt with it. You can't, it's just it's an aspect of life that we all experience. No one gets out alive, but yeah, it's just the conditions that happen where someone's super young, or where it's it just seems too early or not appropriate for the conception of life and reality that you want to believe in. That's, I think, just hard.
It is hard. Last year, actually, at Lake Louise, it was the first time I've ever been really close to a death, I guess you could say. Well, me experiencing it from someone else. This kid, he was 17 years old, and he was going to Sugar Bowl Academy from Germany originally. And it was a downhill training run, and he flew off the jump wrong, and a bunch of graphic details happened. And he ended up passing away on the hill, and we saw the blood and everything. And what made it so heart-wrenching was his parents were on the plane while it happened from Germany to come watch him. And I didn't know him. A lot of people did, but I didn't. And I remember my brother and I just breaking down because he comes in, you bring in their age, and you're like, he was 17. He was doing what he loved, and he died. Like, it doesn't happen often in ski racing. It's different in big mountain and whatnot, but in ski racing, it doesn't happen. And that was the second death within 2 weeks in Canada. And we were just like so distraught. But I mean, it's a hard reality to face, but I think that in the back of our minds, he was doing what he loved. And it's a hard sport, and it's a very dangerous sport. And we forget that, that's a factor.
Yeah, definitely. It's always, it's a topic of conversation that I try to bring up more often than not, just because I think that celebrating people's lives and not just like the birth of someone, but their existence and it will ripple out infinitely into, it's like you said that Bryce is still very much alive in Little Cottonwood Canyon. I think that it's just not talked about enough. And then it makes it harder to approach the subject and harder to, harder to even just grasp your head around it. But I think that it's important to figure out more about just as society, because we're so afraid of death. We do so many things just in the name of like running from death. And sometimes we lack quality of life because of it.
I experienced this year, we went back to Lake Louise. And after that happened, exactly what you're saying, this fear comes in. And they ended up moving the women's start down, which the best part of the course on that particular hill is the start. And I was initially amazed because of the events that happened the year before. However, every single girl that I talked to, and it was so refreshing to hear it, we were all angry because it wasn't what Max would have wanted. He wouldn't want the sport to change just because of an accident that, that happened. But that was cool to hear from other girls. I'm glad it wasn't just me being like, what the hell? Like, it was everyone saying, no, this is what, I know what I'm doing when I go out of that gate. We don't, like you said, we don't bring it up enough, but death is a factor. But we know that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it, that's why we get the adrenaline. Otherwise, we're bumps on a log. Like, that's it. And it was cool to have all the girls be upset about that because, it reminds you it is a factor in our sport, but that, we're willing to do that.
Yeah, totally. What's one thing that you use a technique that you use to overcome fear, especially like in the name of an event like that? Or how do you create that sort of a mindset?
What's interesting is I actually just started a book called The Art of Fear. And it's about why discrediting fear and trying to just overcome it and get rid of it won't work, because it's a natural emotion. And that's what, like, that hit me when you stated you're born with happiness and sadness. You're also born with fear. And I think we forget about that. You can't just get rid of fear. You can't just be like, out the door. Like, that's like trying to get rid of happiness. No, you don't want to do that. And that was really cool. I just started the book, so I haven't read much into it, but that alone, it switched gears in my head to where, it is scary standing at the top of a downhill and being like, a lot could go wrong. And that's where your adrenaline comes from. And I think one thing is I acknowledge when I'm really scared. Like this year, I was terrified at Lake Louise because it was a big race for me, statistically speaking. But I was pissed that it wasn't harder, that they moved the start down. I was like, I want it to be as challenging as it can be. And I've always liked that. I've always liked the harder the course, the better. If it's an easy course, I feel like my mind gets taken out of it because I believe that everyone can compete on an easy course. But what, to me, my strength personally, I feel like I can compete on any type of course as long as my mindset is there, and acknowledging that I might have fear, but like keeping that fear. I don't want to discredit it because I don't want to discredit being happy either. So that changed me a lot, is just realizing it is a normal emotion. And when you are scared, first thing you need to do is acknowledge why, find the origin of that, bring it back and attack it at steps and break down the layers.
Yeah, totally. And I think that there's so much that can apply to in so many different situations where, like there are people who just deal with anxiety on a regular basis. And sometimes you need to, like it could be just anxiety with going out in public. It could be anxiety with approaching a stranger. It could, and, instead of just trying to disregard it and like blast through it, it's like, okay, well, I understand that you're here. I appreciate that you're trying to help keep me alive, because that's essentially what fear is just the brain trying to keep you alive because it is perceiving threat. Yeah. And then like, I appreciate you for trying to keep me alive, but where, is this situation going to be deadly? Is this situation like, could this cause mal effects in my life? And if so, how? And like, what are the steps that I need to take to work through mitigating those risks and variables, and then calculate, is it worth it? And I think that, yeah, it's so easy to just let fear, I don't know, like one of the things that I'm dealing with right now is like, I've been dealing with depression for quite a while, and like trying to like run from it in any way that I possibly can, like pushing it out, like, screw you. Like, I don't want to feel this way. It sucks. Like, why does this have to be in my life? And then, when it comes down to it, it's like, that's not working. So how do I start to embrace it and understand that I'm not going to be happy 24/7, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, you said it right there. It's about going from why is this happening to me to how is this going to benefit me? I think that is a big switch. Is if you're always going at life like, why is this happening to me like this? Why? You're not asking or pushing forward or finding the little things that could benefit you. And when you switch from why to how, it's a big shift. And that's something that I think helps a lot of people once they figure that out. And I have that same thing as, oh, why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this, blah, blah, blah. And that's like this state of mind that it's never going to benefit me. So exactly what you said. I mean, realizing that you're not going to be happy all the time, or you're not going to have everything you want all the time. That's like the first step to, not necessarily overcoming it, but, helping yourself out and, making that next step.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And, how do I feel the most happy? Skiing and like, accomplishing goals. So, okay, how do I, go out and check off some goals? And how do I overcome, like sleeping in too late or whatever it is? It's like, how do I do that instead of why is this happening to me? I think that, such a huge distinction. One gives you power, one removes all of it. Maybe a little bit lighter subject matter. What are some of the things that you do to improve your fitness, and what does your nutrition look like? You know, traveling around, it's hard to stick to a specific diet necessarily, and like you have all these variables. So what do those look like for you?
Something that, you know, I'm actually a born and raised vegan, which as an athlete, a lot of people take a step back and they're like, whoa, like where do you get your protein from? And it is hard when I travel. It, you know, around the US, it's fine, and Canada, but the second you go to Europe, it's like, but it's a good thing my favorite food is pasta, because, you know, like that's honestly a lot of my options. It's like, it's carbs over there, which is fine and it's good. But yeah, I mean, nutrition wise, to me, my parents brought me up on a really broad palette in terms of, you know, being vegan. It was, my mom is an amazing cook, and I want to go to culinary school one day, just because my love of like appreciating the ingredients that I've put into my body, instead of, you know, I had to work for it a little harder. Like, you know, vegan food, vegetarian food in general, gluten-free now, it's all progressing so fast. And as even like 10 years ago, we don't have what we have now. And that's what's so cool to me. So when I'm at home, I mean, yeah, it's just making sure that I get the right protein, the right fats, the carbs, all that. But honestly, like, I don't calculate that much. I just eat whatever I feel like eating, which I think is important for your mental health. We focus so much on diets, but it's like exercise, make yourself feel better, eat what you want. Like, don't eat absolutely terrible if you have a goal, but like eat what makes you happy. And so whatever I'm feeling like, that's what I like to do. And physical wise, I mean, yeah, I started working out at 12, just body weight, with my trainer. And he says something to me all the time, because I was always very skinny. I'm still like, I guess I hate saying it, because it's kind of like, you know, when someone's overweight and they don't want to keep, they're like, oh my gosh, okay, drop the subject. But being a ski racer, there's a lot of like 5'5" and under girls, or, you know, like they're shorter than I am. I'm a little over 5'10", and they're stacked, and they have these like huge muscle mass and like big hips. I'm like, I got my dad's body. Like, I'm taller, lanky, like no hips, like very skinny. But my trainer told me once, he was like, it's not about what you look like, it's about what you can do. And that has stuck with me forever, because I don't look like I can lift much. And people do, you know, they look at you and they automatically judge. And then they look at someone who's like 5'2" and has huge legs. And it's like, well, of course her legs are going to look big. You know what I mean? Like, it's very different. I think we forget about everyone's different genetics and whatnot. But the biggest thing I've learned in fitness is connective tissue, making sure that your body can do everything that you look or read at in a gym. You have to be able to do it with your own body weight. Full range of motion is very important. Number one injury prevention there is. And flexibility has taken, like, that's been a huge thing for me. And I've always been naturally really flexible, but being long and growing so much, I had a lot of growing pains. And so making sure my knees were, you know, the connective tissue was strong, and I could, you know, support by the time when I did put weight on my back. It wasn't just me jumping from 0 to 100. I think it's really important to focus on that. And your core is obviously everything. And it's not always about like the big core movements of like just a sit up. It can be so like breathing exercises, everything. There's so many things that you can do. Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is making sure I'm paying attention to things like my connective tissue and all the little things that can allow me to do the bigger things in terms of lifting.
Totally. So much value in everything that you just said, like from breathing. Like, so many people don't necessarily understand that, like, just by consciously breathing, that you're working your diaphragm and in different ways, and that you can work your diaphragm in different ways, and like how powerful it truly is to be able to work your diaphragm and locate your diaphragm as a muscle versus separating your diaphragm and having, like your ribs knit and like all these different things. Or like, you're like, in yoga, you hear like breathe into your back. And like when you first hear that, you're like, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah, how am I supposed to do that? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I only got one set of lungs. What are you talking about?
That's one thing is I've learned. My good friend is like a yoga instructor, and I think people go about yoga wrong for sure. They've taken it from, it's become this like, oh, let's go and get our workout in, and people forget that it starts from your breathing, and it is such a core workout if you do it right. If you do it wrong, like you feel it in your arms more than your core, and that's what's been. It's really cool. Like you can learn so much from breathing techniques and meditation or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, totally. Is meditation something that you do?
Yes and no. I try to be a little bit more strict with it, but it's more effective in the morning. When you wake up and meditate, it's way better than doing it midday or at night. But it's also harder in the morning because you wake up, you have a bunch of thoughts. You're like, okay, I got to do this today. And of course, like you're not in a meditative state, but it teaches you a lot about, your ego, and you can't let thoughts come in because that's solely your ego. That's the whole point of meditation is overcoming that, and like, don't let it take anything away from you. Don't let a thought come in that shouldn't be there at that exact space. I think that it teaches you a lot for being an athlete too, because where should your mind be? What should you let in and keep out? So yeah, but I'm not a master at it for sure. I'm not like a monk that can like meditate with their eyes open and be all good. Like I'm pretty beginner, but I do like it. I do appreciate it a lot. Anything like yoga, all that stuff, I just find it really cool to go, and it teaches you a lot about your body and life in general.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that yoga, meditation, breath work are super important for the right person. And like you said, there are certain people that things work for, and there's certain, like veganism works for you. There are some people that like maybe not born and raised that way, and like you try and shift the body's physiological conditioning, and they'd be like, what the heck?
Yeah. I know, I get that a lot. They're like, how can you do it? I'm like, honestly, being born and raised on it and the knowledge of that, I think that's why I can do it. It's not easy. It's really not, but it's getting easier, and that's what's so cool. It's just like everything else. It's all evolving. Just like computers and phones are. It's the same thing.
Totally. Like you were saying, like gluten-free meals and stuff like that, like have come a long way to the point where like it was like, oh, like we can create it, but it's not necessarily going to be very good. And now it's at a point where like,
yeah,
there's good
gluten-free pancakes, gluten-free and vegan pancakes that I make are better than non-gluten-free. I don't know why, but sometimes they can be fluffier and it can be better. So, it went from being like the most disgusting thing, like, to you can do almost anything. They can make anything with it. Yep. But I will say the bread still, there's good bread, but it's not like a good, fresh, hot, like French loaf. It won't ever be. I don't think. Like, there's nothing that beats normal bread for me.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. There's certain things that work with it. Like, I'm actually super surprised they eat like a gluten-free bagel almost every morning right now. And the bagels I'm like super stoked on. But
is it that you know what brand it is?
I think it's Canyon Bakehouse.
Okay, yeah. There's a couple that are really good actually. It's just, yeah. And they have like now they have sourdough and all that coming out. It's really cool.
Yeah, totally. Have you done any research on like sourdough being like there's certain people like because of the way that sourdough, the gluten in sourdough comes together, like people will be more inclined to eat sourdough or it could actually be beneficial for your stomach versus non-beneficial? Have you done like just random side thought? Have you done any research on that or watched it?
I haven't actually, but I will say when I go to the Boudin factory, like anytime I'm in San Fran or something like that, I'm obsessed with sourdough. I personally love it. It's like the best bread there is to me, and it's not like wheat or whatever. Maybe not the healthiest, but it tastes good. So
I love sourdough too. Always have. Absolutely, always have. A couple rapid fire questions, and then I'll let you go for right now. Where's one of your favorite places you've ever traveled for skiing?
honestly, I love Lake Louise in Canada. It's so beautiful. And aside from that, honestly, I just love Europe in general, but Switzerland and Italy are my favorite. There's a little town called Pozza di Fassa. That's where World Juniors are this year, actually. Well, they were. They happened last month. And it's tiny, and there's not much to do, but mountains, and I love it there. Somewhere in the summer too. I want to go somewhere in Europe in the summer because I've only been.
Yeah, I trained at in Pitstall in the fall, and that's always such a fun experience. Have you been there before?
I haven't been there. The only place I've been in the fall is Hinnertuck and Sauce Bay.
Okay.
Yeah. But I know all about Pitstall. It can get crazy there, but I've heard it's good.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Yeah, I skied with some Europa Cup teams, and you're training next to the Austrian World Cup team, and you're like, what the heck?
What's so cool about it is you're so close to everyone, and you can watch the most amazing skiers, and yeah, it's really cool. And that's what's awesome about Europe in general. The US needs to get on the bandwagon.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, Mount Hood is an amazing place for progression in the summer, and I remember seeing Shaun White out there, and all sorts of different people. And
everybody's been to Mount Hood. It's a good place.
Totally. What does success mean to you?
Success to me is, in terms of a feeling that I have, is it's like I said earlier, if I come down and I skied my best and I went for it, to me that's a successful day. And being humble and through victory and through failure is a huge thing. I think that watching skiers like Bodie and them, they go all out, and whether or not they win that day, that he went for it. And to me, that's in itself. Holding back is when I feel like I failed, or just not accomplishing what my intention was that day.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I think success is a state of being more than it is a end goal accomplishment. As athletes, it's so easy to get tied into this idea of, if I win, I'm successful. Mm-hmm. And that's just setting yourself up to get smacked, Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Bodie saying something exactly like that, where he was like, it's not about the records for me. That's somebody else's career. It's about the skiing for me. And that's what I've always loved about it, because that's exactly what I grew up with at Snowbird. It's about the skiing. You can make anything successful if you just, go out there to ski your best instead of go out there to win. That mindset, that little bit, ski your best to win, but if you're just focusing on winning, you get yourself into trouble, which I have experienced myself. So
totally. And it's one of those situations where we were talking about the why versus the how. It's like placing your all of your success in the idea of winning is like asking why versus like asking how, because all of the power then goes outside of you. Your happiness, everything else is conditional upon external variables instead of creating it for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. The whole like why and how thing. I think that that's like the strongest thing that somebody can learn.
What's one piece of advice you'd pass along to someone who wants to do what you do?
Comparing is, in my opinion, I've done that so much where it's like comparing yourself to others. And I think this goes in life too. We all do it. It's natural, you know. But if you compare yourself positively to someone, like Michaela Schifrin, and you know how hard she works, and you're trying to be like that, but in your own way, that I think is a good comparison. But when you're comparing the same why and how, like what we were talking, it's like, I should be where they are, or, you know, why am I not there quite yet? That it just eats away at you. I think you have to trust that where you are in your personal ski career is exactly where you're supposed to be, even though like that can be really hard to believe. But after injuries that I've gone through and like all the different levels that I've been at, it's all a part of the process. It's there for a reason. It's, you know, I got injured for a reason. That specific time, I have to believe that. So I think comparing yourself to others is inevitable. It's just how you do it is what's effective.
Touching on that, I think it's good to compare what core principles people adopt that allow them to create success. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to distill through this podcast, is by asking so many different skiers these questions about mindset and fitness and nutrition and all of these things, and dealing with fear, all of, you know, finding those core principles that other people can adopt and make their own, because you can't make someone else's life or someone else's experience or someone, you know, like you're saying, Bodhi, like that's someone else's career. Like you can't make that your own, but you can find their foundational fundamental principles and adopt those to create your own story. I think that that's really important. What's one piece of encouragement or wisdom that you received that stuck with you?
I think it's that same thing. I think back to it. It's not about what you look like. It's about what you can do. That, to me, it goes for everything. It goes for being an athlete, for being just a human being. You compare, you know, there's a lot of insecurities. You can't, you know, you don't know everyone's full story. And if you know what you can do, it doesn't matter. Your actions will show. You don't have to tell people. You don't have to say, hey, I can lift this much, or this is what I do on a daily basis. You show it, you put it to action. And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
Totally. Love it. If you could have one significant impact in the world, what would it be? I
think for me, you can never have too many passions. Skiing is my passion, but art is, and cooking is, and my family. So I guess if I could have an impact, it would be to be like known as somebody who tries a lot of things, no matter if I'm good or bad. Just somebody who chases a lot of things. That, you know, I don't know how put that in the words, but that's something I've always thought about. It's just, I have so many passions. I always want to try something new and become like the best at it. And then I start it and I realize how hard it is. I'm not going to be the best, but it's something that I enjoy. So yeah, I mean, I guess being known as a passion chaser, I don't know.
Yeah. So like a lot of it, I think, comes down to confidence in yourself, and it being kind of like what you just said, it being about what you can do, not how you look while you're doing it, sort of thing. Yeah, it's like if you can approach anything with confidence, and you could be the worst dancer or singer or, you know, musician on the planet,
Yeah.
But if you're having fun while you're doing it and you're passionate about learning, then you're winning the game versus anyone else who's judging you.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I guess, yeah, I would want to be known to be passionate.
Love it, for sure. You have a favorite travel tip or hack that can pass along to anyone?
I will say, when you were mentioning that, there was one trip that I didn't carry them on. I lost my bags and I was screwed. I went in rental boots for the day and I almost killed myself. So yeah, always take your boots on. I guess take something that reminds you of home with you, whether that's a candle for some people or like essential oils, or like I bring my stuffed animal with me everywhere that my brother got me. And I think that that's like, that helps me. It just makes you feel more comfortable.
Yeah, totally. And where's the best place for people to find you, follow your journey, keep up with what you're doing, get in contact with you if they want?
Well, follow me on Instagram. So it's at Bella Wright, BELLSWRIGHT. And yeah, I mean, you can contact me there. That's probably the easiest place. And yeah, I'll check my DMs. You can go ahead and just slide in.
Awesome. Well, sweet.
Hey, just one more thing before you go. I wanted to say thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope that you really enjoyed it. A couple things that I would ask that you do if you enjoyed today's episode. Number one, go follow us on Instagram at The Athletic Stance Podcast. Number two, if you don't mind leaving a review, rating it, and subscribing, it always helps. It helps spread the word. It helps me know what you guys are enjoying or not. And if you don't mind leaving a comment on Instagram, letting me know what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying, I will always take into consideration. And feel free to send me a message with recommendations on who you'd like to hear from, what you'd like to hear us talk about. And as always, thank you so much for listening, for your time, and we'll see you next time at the Athletic Stance Podcast.